Jonathan Gennick. I'm an editor with A-Press. I'm actually have the privilege of being Jonathan Lewis editor. And I'm going to present 7 secrets, or at least 7 things about publishing that I suspect many people don't know and that might prove useful, especially if you're thinking maybe about writing something someday. First is that often you run into the thought that books are dead. You know, we have the internet, we just Google everything we need. But I will tell you, the long-form content, there's still a need for it despite the stiff competition. Humans have needed it for thousands of years in one way, form, or another, and I suspect we still will. Eric earlier mentioned Kerry Millsap, and I was privileged to be his editor years ago. Kerry wrote a book. He wanted to make a difference and change the way the industry thought about tackling performance problems and thinking about performance problems. And so to put together the kind of in-depth argument that he needed to put together, he really needed something long form. He chose to use a book to do that, and it's the one that I believe has made a difference. Books are also good for describing coherent processes that require in-depth knowledge. So Chris Antognini's troubleshooting book lays out a method for tackling performance problems that you wouldn't fit into a 2,000-word blog post. And books are also good for portability. I think of Stephen Covey's 7 Habits. I could sit someone down and I could try to go over 7 habits and explain and argue and defend them, or I can just say, here you go, have the book, take that. So books provide a nice portability to arguments. So definitely aren't going away, but certainly we do face some stiffer competition with the other types of media. If you're a nonfiction author, we're very lucky. If you're a nonfiction person, or you write, especially if you're a technical nonfiction person and you want to write, you're in a very good position. You have amazing access to publishers. We're all desperate. It's publish or perish for us, right? So there are a lot more publishers out there and a fairly low number of technology people interested in writing. So unlike the case with fiction authors and romance authors and science fiction authors, who typically can't even get the time of day if they've never been published before, tech publishers are very, very eager to talk to people. And I think in this industry we're just in a remarkable position that way. Books are a business. It's easy to forget that. They're also very personal, and so we tend to want to work on them and polish them. My boss will sometimes speak about the pipe and slippers method of publishing, where you kind of leisurely work towards some abstract goal of perfection. And this is a real secret that I'm going to tell you, most people in the publishing world, editors included, have variable pay that's tied to quarterly targets and yearly targets and various other outputs. And for good business reasons, that's the case. And so if you ever have an editor and they're beating you up about the schedule, they're probably a little bit worried about their paycheck. But also the timeliness matters. A good enough book on the right topic is often more valuable now than the perfect book a year later. iOS 8 just recently released. This is a big, very important time in the market for iOS 8 books. Everyone who's programming for the iPhone, they want to come up to speed on the next system and so they can write the next Angry Birds. So if you're publishing a book, if you're writing a book on iOS 8 development, you need to get that out in the market, now or within the next few months, because a year from now, the value of that book is tremendously, tremendously diminished. It doesn't matter how good it is a year from now, because no one cares, and iOS 9 will be out, right? So that can matter. This probably, if you've written before, probably is not a secret at all. Talk to anyone in the room. The dollars can seem a little bit dismal, especially for people who are billing out at some of the rates that Oracle consultants do. This slide, I actually brought some data along for this topic. It was interesting. The money that you make from a book can actually depend as much or more on the topic area that you happen to be writing in. So if you're an Oracle person, and what I have here, I have the top 5 selling Oracle.net and Android development books, right, for this year, just for the calendar year. I looked at unit sales from Nielsen Bookscan, and these are the top 5 books. And so you can see if you're an Oracle author and you want to have greater sales, you should write about Android instead, perhaps, because the level is universally up there. So it is true with Oracle books, and I usually, I'm definitely upfront with people, or I try to be when I talk to them. It is true with Oracle books that you don't see the boom and bust cycles that you typically see with iOS and Android, where things are up and down a lot. It's more of a long, slow burn type of market. And it definitely, if you're going to write, it really is useful to have some other reasons in mind besides just the raw dollars. And one of those other reasons is the career credibility that a book can give you. If you can show me an author who's written a workmanlike book and gone through that, I can show you a person who's got the stamina and the stomach to take on a long project and do what needs to be done to get it done. It says a lot about a person that he's willing to face a project and conquer the difficult parts. I can also show you someone who's probably got deeper than normal knowledge, because if you're writing on a topic, let's face it, you really have to get into some nooks and crannies that you can gloss over when you're just talking about it. And one would hope if you've written that you're also a good communicator and persuasive. I can speak from my own personal experience. When I first published, the attitude of my management toward me changed dramatically. Right, I was, instead of being perceived as a backroom programmer, they started paying more attention to my opinions, which probably weren't any better than they used to be, but they paid more attention to them for better or for worse. They also threw me at a lot more challenging projects, so it was definitely a time of growth for me, because they perceived that I was capable of doing more than I had been, and so they threw me at much tougher projects. But with that came a wide latitude to continue writing and even to continue the writing side of things that also had worked well for their business. So it was a win all the way around, but it did a lot for my career. This is one I run into a lot. E-books, are they cheaper than print books? Actually, they are, but not as much as you might think. Sometimes I'll have an author, not too often, but once in a while an author will pitch an idea that's not commercially viable, and I'll tell them that, and they'll say, well, what if we just publish it as an e-book? But it really won't make any difference, because the editorial costs, the amount of effort that goes into designing the chapters and the arc of the content and the flow through those chapters, and that's all the same. The copy editing costs are the same, the proofreading costs are the same, the indexing costs are the same. Where you save money with ebooks are the paper printing binding costs, really, which if you take a typical 500-page book, depending on how you print it, but if you're printing it, you're probably looking at print costs of $3 to $6 a unit, depending on whether you're printing short run or traditional offset printing. So that's going to be a savings of 6 to 12% over the cover price, which is significant, and we're happy to have that. But it's not enough to make a topic viable that's not otherwise viable, and especially that's the case because only about a third of our sales from a book these days are print anyway. The rise of subscription services and so forth, electronics are actually about 2/3 or more of book sales in the current market. Seventh secret, and this again might not be, but authors can be their own best friend when it comes to marketing. A-Press publishes 225 books, give or take, a year, and most other publishers similarly publish in the hundreds. So the marketing department at any big company, their focus is going to be spread across a lot of different books. So that the marketing efforts tend to go more into marketing the brand, building the brand, or marketing clusters of books, such as perhaps all the SQL Server books together. So the authors are the best ones to focus, or help the marketing people focus in specifically on their books. And you can also reach what I like to term micro audiences that publishers can't. So if you're active in a forum on your topic, and the good question to ask is, do the people in your forum know that you've written a book? Do you mention that book in your signature? Because you can reach those people in ways that the publisher cannot. If you're up presenting, did you use a copy of your book on your slides, right? Because you guys right here are a micro audience, right, that I can reach. I probably should have plugged my own book earlier, or one of them, but I didn't. But every one of these public opportunities is a chance to do that. And you'll find too that any publisher, not just A-Press, but any publisher's marketing department really wants to work with you. So keep them in the loop when you do things. I'm attending Java 1. I'm actually registered as a Java 1 person. And offhand, I can only remember one Java author. A-Press has dozens and dozens of Java books, but there was only one author that actually sent me an email and said, I'm presenting 3 times at Java 1. Could we do something to promote the book? I'd like to plug it during the talk, and could A-Press help out? And of course, we're happy to try to help out, and I put them in touch with the marketing people. But I'm sure we have many other Java authors, and I'm not sure how many Oracle authors even bothered to let us know. So if you have written, keep your publisher in the loop, because we can't keep up with everybody. There's so many authors that we don't know everybody's travel plans. But if we can get a little heads up, that can make a significant difference. Bonus tip, books can change lives, and the example I like to throw out here is Chris Date's book, A Guide to the SQL Standard, quarter-inch thick, first edition. I can still remember, 1991. This probably was in the spring. I was in the bookstore, South Bend Mall bookstore, staring at this book, and it was $30 for a quarter-inch. I couldn't bring myself to pay $30 for a quarter-inch of paper, so I put it back on the shelf. Right next to it was a 2-inch thick book for the same price, and but I wasn't drawn to that book by the content, so I didn't buy that one either. I made a second trip back to that store, looked at both books, and still couldn't bring myself to pay $30. I liked the content in Chris Date's book. I didn't really know who he was, but I liked what I saw. But I spent $30 for a quarter-inch. I just couldn't do it. So somebody finally told me at work, they said, the company will buy that. So I was happy to spend the company's money. And that was the best $30 of their money I ever spent. It tremendously made a difference, and really that book was one of the bellwether moments in my career. There was an appendix at the back that was probably only 20 pages, maybe 30 itself. The appendix was Chris Date's critique on SQL and all the things he didn't like about the language, along with explanations about all these things that he didn't like. And I learned so much from that one appendix. I still today look back at reading that appendix as a pivotal moment in my career. It put me head and shoulders above everyone I worked with, which probably says something about the state of our industry at times. But it put me head and shoulders above everyone I worked with in terms of databases, and it's a big part of the reason why I stayed with them, and probably why I'm up here in front today. So they really can make a difference. And I talked to Chris later about that, because I ended up publishing him, surprisingly enough, when I was at O'Reilly Media a few years ago. Chris said he almost didn't write the book. He wrote it because he figured if he didn't, someone else would. So it might as well be him. So it was almost a last-minute lark on his part. He probably didn't realize the difference it would make to me, and he probably didn't realize that the guy reading his book would one day end up publishing him and getting him looped in with O'Reilly Media. And I know since then at O'Reilly, I've left, but since then he's successfully published many times. So that's what I have. If you want to read this is up on blog form now. It should have gone live while I was speaking here on gennick.com/7. It's all there as one long blog post, and that's what I have.